So just to update you, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that thank you to everyone who watched my documentary that I released. It took me quite a long time to put that together, and I hopefully I did it justice. The bad news is that I've been served legal notice by GoFundMe and also Bassett's. GoFundMe want the money back. Apparently there's been some complaints. Apparently that documentary did not meet the standards that my supporters were expecting. The good news, aside from that, is that I found the fleece that my dad was wearing in that documentary. So we'll be auctioning that one off. And I'm also going to auction Fenton off on the channel. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'm joking. So yeah, if you want a 20-year-old fleece and a sausage dog, you know where to go. So in the opening you heard me trying to play Danny Boy, and it's one of these tunes that I've heard people like Keith Jarrett play. Jacob Collier did a really cool version of it. But I think it's a good opportunity to talk about some solo guitar stuff and why you might want to consider playing solo guitar, and some tips if you're into this sort of thing. Just to say, the chord melody for a rough kind of guide for what I was playing there, I'll put up on my Patreon if you want it. I'm going to go, and whilst Lenny's walking the dogs, I'll transcribe some of it. But so, as I always say, the most important thing for me is the melody. So that's always where I start. When it comes to the solo guitar thing, I think it probably does initially make sense to try and work from someone else's arrangement. I think so. Ted Green might have done a Danny Boy, possibly. I remember early on when I was thinking about, I say early on, maybe like 4 years ago or something, when I was thinking about this kind of solo guitar stuff, Ted Green is one of those guys early on that did this stuff really well. Obviously there's Joe Pass, but that's in a kind of different niche and sort of super involved. So I was kind of thinking more along the lines of kind of Jonathan Kreisberg kind of sensibilities, where it's not necessarily crazy busy necessarily, but kind of melody led, and then you kind of placing the chords around it. But yeah, Ted Green I think did a version of Sending the Clowns, which I checked out early on. I sort of did my own thing around that. I don't remember if I'd actually seen the Ted Green video before or after I'd done it, but I've seen it now. But I had seen Ted Green doing some other tunes and stuff. But it sort of occurred to me that this is kind of like the most musical kind of guitar stuff there is. So if it's just you and a guitar, can you make music? And for a long time I kind of struggled with this. You know, you go around to someone's house or whatever, or family members, and they say, can you play something? And unaccompanied, frankly, I was kind of finding it difficult to play anything particularly that they would want to hear, if you know what I mean. You could play the odd rock riff or whatever, but I wasn't really into that. And so, you know, not really, I can't play you anything. Whereas now, guitar, I see it more as a kind of piano-like instrument, in that hopefully at some stage I'll be able to sit down at it like I can sit down at piano and just sort of play around, and things can come out and not necessarily sound awful. So that's what I think is cool about this solo guitar thing. I think so. People that I would check out in this realm: Jonathan Kreisberg, Julian Lage, I don't know exactly how you say that, Gilad Hexelman, Mike Marino to some extent, I think Kurt Rosenwinkel even. But these modern players generally are doing some pretty cool stuff, I think. And it's not necessarily super busy like some of the older stuff, and I think makes use of some kind of contemporary effects and stuff, so it can I think be a little bit more potentially appealing to the modern guitarist than some of the old stuff. That's not to say there's also really great stuff by people like Lenny Burrow, Ted Green, as I've said, Joe Pass, all of those players as well. But just thoughts about solo guitars. We've also got people like Julian, who will talk about his approach, and Gilad. So one of the things that they talk about, and the real focus here for me, is improvisation and spontaneity. So if you've got something like Danny Boy, that's kind of your skeleton. So that chord melody, as I say, will be on the Patreon. So if you think of that as your skeleton, and then in jazz what we do is we do choruses. So we play that thing, that structure repeatedly. And so Gilad, I think, talked about sort of when you're practicing, playing through a few choruses and trying to approach it differently. And some of the things you might do, you might just play the melody for one. Then maybe you try and add like a root third, fifth or seventh to kind of accentuate the melody in various places. So even just adding one root note in certain places during your melody can really add something. And you can move on from there. So maybe the next thing you might want to look at is the thing that I talked about, I think last week maybe, but adding roots and thirds. So, and obviously the first time you try this is not going to work particularly well, but you'll start to, as you try and do this, add little bits and find things that work quite commonly. Add literally root and seventh, third and fifth of each chord. So you maybe play that through aside from the melody, or you play that with the melody. And work out the different ways that you could do that. So that's one approach you could take. Another you could take is to maybe try and play like a certain rhythm. If you're doing something like Autumn Leaves, for example, pick a comping rhythm and play that throughout. And so on and so forth with that. The next thing you could do is to try and take the melody for some of it and then improvise around that and occasionally come back to the melody. So say I've done one chorus of Danny Boy and played it kind of straight ahead-ish. You start your next chorus. Start to free that up. Another thing that I really like to try and do is to repeat the things that I'm playing sort of in time-ish, but like an octave below. And try and hold your melody notes at the top. So this is a really good technical exercise, but also a physical challenge and like a mental challenge. So So super difficult to do, so just start it off slow, but that might be something really useful. So super difficult to do, but you can get this kind of moving voices thing happening with this. And so yeah, that's a super good kind of challenge, and I think that might be a really good place to start to try and get the kind of counter melody, counter point thing going on. But yeah, so those are just some of the ideas that I like to kind of play about with. I think also a freeze pedal. I think a freeze pedal can really help you to kind of be creative in these spots, but also don't be afraid of space. So things like the space is not really an issue there. So yeah, hopefully this was vaguely interesting. Just wanted to share some of my ideas about this kind of solo guitar thing. As I say, there's great stuff out there from Gerhard Hexelman and Julian Leish on this kind of thing. They're also worth bearing in mind, I think, that people have worked on these specific tunes that they're playing for years and years. So if you look at like Jonathan Kreisberg, there's videos of him playing Caravan in an arrangement that sounds pretty similar to what he still plays today, about 10 years ago in a masterclass. So you're not working on a finished product, you're working on kind of ideas, and these little songs, they're not finalized ideas, they're things that you use to kind of express your musicality at whatever stage you're at. So Danny Boy is not a final tune that I'm aiming to play, rather it's kind of this lens through which I'm trying to express my creativity. So you know, I played Danny Boy at the intro, I'm going to play it in the outro. They're not exactly the same, and if I was to play it a few years later and I'd been practicing Danny Boy forever, there'd be other stuff that would creep out into that, I think, and even if I played it again tomorrow it would be completely different. I guess that's the fun of the improvisation part. As I say, if you want the chord melody as a good place to start from, I'll put that up on my Patreon. Thank you for stopping by. If you could like and subscribe, that would really help. Thank you for watching. Cheers.